Welcome to the next live match. Now this is a bit of a match of a difference. I was actually out in Match Fishing magazine doing an Against the Clock feature, so if you want to check that out, it'll be in an upcoming issue of Match Fishing magazine. But if you want to see the video footage, carry on watching. Okay, so just getting ready for the match. And it's going to be an all-out paced approach. Now, first job is to get my hemp cooking. I use this Cook For Me, which is a Tefal product. It's like a pressure cooker, I suppose. I just whack it in there, the hemp, with a load of water, 25 minutes, leave it, it's good to go, it's brilliant. Great bit of kit, means I can do it outside rather than in the kitchen and smell the house out, so really good product. Now, I'm just doing my paste, and as you all know, I normally use Thatcher's with a bit of this, but I actually got sent a bag of this through the post. Primer Track's fine. Now, so I got a bag of this, sent through the post. Primer Track's fine. The reason I was interested in it, it was fine, and Barry, who is the sort of media guy there, texted me and said, look, we've made this new ground bait and it's really oily, it might be good for your paste fishing. So I thought, why not check it out? I'm sure you guys will be interested for something different. Now, initial inspection is really oily, which is actually a good thing for paste. Obviously the oil slows the breakdown and it stinks, which obviously another good thing. It's quite a nice colour, it's a natural colour, but it's very, almost orange. It's really good. So I thought I'm going to use it in tomorrow's match, so let's see how fine it really is, because we'll pass it through the ultimate test. You can see it's oily because it almost makes a ball. Look at that, without any water added to it. It's got loads of oil in it. I think it's going to make a lovely paste. But this is the fine one. And they do a coarse one, obviously, for your pole fishing and stuff. That's about half a bag, I reckon. So let's see how fine it is. And there's a few shards left in there, but to be honest, not a lot of really, really small, almost like salmon fry left in there. I'd be happy leaving that in, to be honest with you, but we'll put that in our ground bait. So we're left with this lovely oily ground bait. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a bit of the wheat gluten, because even though this is an oily ground bait, I still can't go paste fishing without this. I need to make my red paste as well, so I don't think this is going to take the red dye very well, so I'm going to do that with my other bait. I like to have red and natural options. I know a lot of you have seen that in my other videos and whatnot, so I like to have other options in that front. You see the white powder in there? That's the wheat gluten. I just sort of cover the surface of it when I put... Okay, bit of a cut there. Toilet training, potty training the daughter. Anyway, so I put some... I like to do it in a shallow tray, and then I just cover it with that wheat gluten. It just seems to be about the right amount. So let's get this knocked up. So I've got a bucket of water here. Pretty slack when it comes to exact measurements, but that's how I do things. So I'm looking to sort of half fill that with water-ish, a bit more water in there, and then we'll put the powder in. And I just know from previous experience that that is about enough for a match for me. Let's just put that in there. I'm looking forward to giving this a try tomorrow. I think it's going to be a really nice paste. I'm going to let it a bit more powder in there. In fact, it'll probably take all that. I can always add a bit more water if I need to. I just find that these Tupperwares and that keeps my bait fresh for one. Obviously, as well as that, keeps me gives me a rough idea of how much bait I need and use throughout the session. So that's going to be my natural paste for the day. And I think that is going to be a winner. I can already feel that wheat gluten taking effect. It's nice and fine. It stinks. It's oily. I can see it's oily. Look at that. That is going to be a lovely paste. When that wheat gluten activates, that's going to be absolutely perfect. That is. Just makes it a touch wetter. I always make it a little bit on the dry side, and then obviously I can wet it down on the day. And don't be worried if you are adding wheat gluten to your bait. Don't be worried if you don't see it immediately. It's best doing this the day before. I'm fishing tomorrow. It's best to do this the day before, whack it in the fridge, and then come back to it, in my experience. And it'll be better the next day, or even the day after that. So there we go. Primer Tracks paste. Really looking forward to trying it. I'm going to get on and mix on my red paste and a bit of ground bait. I like to do my ground bait the day before as well. But I think that's going to be more than enough. I put decent lumps of that on. And then I like the red stuff in the margins. So there you go. Primer Tracks paste. Looks really nice. As you can see, that wheat gluten is starting to activate. I think you could use this without it. Look at that, lovely, soft and smooth. That's going to be a lovely paste. Right, hemp's finished, all done. Show you, take the lid off, and you get this, look at all that oil and goodness that's trapped in there. You don't lose it through all the cooking. And then look, so that was 25 minutes. Perfectly split hemp. There's about 5 pints in there. More than enough for a match. And I don't use micros or anything, I just use hemp, so it sounds a lot, but I get through it no problem. And it's a good bait, and it keeps, like if I just pop it in one of these, right, put the juice on it, put the lid on once it's cold obviously, and you end up with hemp that keeps. You can put a bit of salt on there if you want to. You could put chilies in the cooking process, but salt after is what I like to do, a bit of salt in there. I'll do that next. And then once this juice is cooled, I'll get that on there as well. But yeah, that's how I do my hemp, really simple. And that gadget is absolutely brilliant. Just quickly for those interested, a bit of Himalayan, that's all I put in. Get that in there. Give it a mix around. Let it in there, and then I'm going to top this up with the juice. Obviously that salt will work its way through the bait. Lovely. So the match was actually at Shearsby Valley, my favourite sort of paste water. Like I say, I was meeting up with Match Fishing Magazine. Alex Bones was doing a against the clock feature with me, and it was obviously one of those venues. We were limited to what day we could use, and it was the only match we could get on. So Shearsby Valley, brilliant. Drew peg 28 on Hurricane, which is a fantastic peg. Now, this lake hasn't actually been, I've only fished there once this year in match conditions, which I won, which was nice. Obviously you can find that on the channel somewhere. However, this lake hasn't been getting match fished so much lately. They've been putting all the matches on Tornado on those two lakes, and you could tell. So I drew on peg 28 and my peg was completely overgrown. So the first job that I had to do, give it a real good trim down. Now you can garden at this venue, obviously within reason, but first job was to get it all nicely cut out. The approach was similar to always for me. Top kit and one with paste, margins were paste, and then obviously I like to fish pea paste as well. Now traditionally on this venue at the moment I catch fish early and late, and then in the middle I have to fish shallow or something, but just lately, ever since sort of middle of last year, I just go down pea paste and I either fish it, I fish like a little swinging rig to hand down the right hand margin, or I'll fish the pea paste on the bottom over my sort of top kit on one line. And I actually decided to prepare both options. So the plan was to feed decent quantities of hemp on a top kit and one and fish big paste there and pea paste over the top. Sloppy ground bait to my right, just throwing little nuggets in, little tiny, like, I don't know, little marbles of pea slop in, and then feed aggressively my left hand margin with big paste and ground bait for later in the session. To kick the match off, got my nets in and then put in half a pot of hemp. And I was expecting a really quick start. Sean opposite me, Sean Powell, is a really good angler. He catches loads of fish at this venue, and he got off to a lightning quick start. But mine, even though the wind was blowing into my face and I really fancied it, mine was actually a bit of a frustrating start. In fact, I barely caught anything for the first half an hour. I think I caught one little carp, maybe an F1, a couple of skimmers. And what has actually happened on this lake, which I'm sure a lot of you can probably relate to on the venues that you fish, there's been an explosion of tiny fish. Tiny roach, there's some skimmers in there now that never used to be in there. There's little goldfish, there's little crucians that are breeding. It's such a healthy water that the fish are just breeding and breeding and breeding. And all of a sudden there's all these little fish to wade through. And I was putting my paste in with floats, like dibbing and dobbing around, really frustrating. And it actually took me I just kept going with what I know, and rather than actually looking at the situation, what was actually happening, I was just kind of I got myself in a bit of a fluster because I'm just trying to feed me little pinch of hemp and wade through, waiting for the carp to come in, but it was obvious that it wasn't actually going to happen. So what I started to do, I was feeding slop, by the way, out on my right hand margin, but what I decided to do was feed much more aggressive, which sounds obvious, but I'm always wary of putting too much bait in. But it called for it, the situation demanded it, I needed to be more aggressive with the food. to let you down, let yourself down. So I started upping the hemp, the amount of hemp I was putting in, I started to put a lot more of that in, and it worked to a degree. I was suddenly starting to catch, there was obviously some better fish in the swim, those little fish were becoming less of a nuisance, but I wasn't catching anything on the big paste. So what I actually did, I picked up my pea-paste rig, which is a prototype float, a little bulk, and I started just flicking that in, and I was catching odd skimmer, golden orf, blue orf, little carp, odd F1, odd, very odd carp, but all of a sudden I'm catching, and one thing about Shearsby, and I've said it loads of times, apart from those diddy little fish, nearly always if you get a bite at Shearsby, it's 10 ounces or above. So even though I'm catching these skimmers and crusions and stuff, they're still weight builders, you know what I mean? They're still catching, you know, you catch 15 of them, you've got 10 pounds, for example. So, plus you generally don't just catch 15 in a row, you'll catch a carp mixed in, you'll catch an F1. So all of a sudden you're catching well. And it was just a case of using that pea paste. But what was happening, and it was quite interesting, and again, it's common sense, but when you're in the heat of the moment, you don't often see it. I'm fishing tiny bits of pea paste and it's getting knocked off the hook by those little roach. But if I put the big paste on, I wasn't getting any bites at all. So I was getting more and more frustrated with myself. And in the end, it was just a simple case of putting a marble-sized piece on rather than pea. And once I did that, put a marble on, I was away. I was catching loads of fish on the marble paste. After a little while, the right hand margins showed signs of coming to life as well, just throwing those little balls of slop in. I could see an odd fish moving around, not carp, but you can tell, can't you, when there's fish that are a bit bigger moving around, F1s and stuff. So what I was doing, I was using that little float, a little prototype, 0.3, and I fish it like a top kit worth of line with a little short number 3 on, and I swing it up against the reeds. What I like to do, I like to throw some slop in and then swing my rig into position. I'm not fishing shallow, I'm fishing it on the bottom, and again, that was really good. I'm not catching big fish, but I'm catching these weight building fish, which is the key to this venue. When the carp aren't feeding, you need to keep feeding that keep net, and I'm away. Sean's way ahead of me at this point. He's probably got 50, 60, maybe even 70 pound, and I'm probably only on 30 pound. But what I found on this venue, once you get that swim going, you get, I've said it millions of times, you get the colour in the water, you get the noise of you get more, you feed more, you're being more aggressive. It all works in harmony, and all of a sudden the fish are there. You know, they're coming in, they come to investigate, they're curious, they're hungry. And the more I can catch these skimmers and crusions and bits and bobs, I just knew that it was gonna like pay off in the long run. Even though it looked like I wasn't catching Sean up, I kept saying to Alex, as long as I can just keep getting bites, I'm happy. Now, one thing I did notice was the need to swap and change between the lines, so I'd catch a few fish in front of me, I'd catch a few fish to my right, and just rotate them. And what generally happened whenever I went on the line to start with, I'd get a couple of quick bites and there'd be slightly better stamped fish, bigger skimmers, bigger crusions, bigger F1s. So rather than just keep ploughing down it, what I was doing, I was taking 2 or 3 fish, putting another bit of hemp in, going down the edge, catch 2 or 3 fish, then rotating, and it was working an absolute treat. Now, after a little while, everything started to sort of come together. I'm hooking an odd carp on that top kit on one line now. I'm hooking an odd carp down my right hand one on the slop and the marble paste, shall we say. It's all coming together. You can just tell. It's experience at the venue, I suppose, but you can just tell when the fish start coming in, and that's what was happening. They were coming in numbers, and carp are coming in now. I'm hooking more and more of them. In fact, I caught 10 in 10 chucks down my right hand edge. They weren't big, they were 2 pounders, but all of a sudden I'm on 100 pound, and I shouted across to Sean, asked him what he'd got, and he got a little bit more still, and he said Dave to my left, Dave Smith, was bagging as well. So all of a sudden, I'm within the striking range. If I can get to 100 pound with 2 hours to go at this venue, I'm always confident. In fact, I'm super confident. If I can get to 70 pound with 2 hours to go, I'm super confident. That's how much faith I've got in the margins on this venue. It all comes together for me when this happens, and it's up to me to get to that point, whether it's shallow fishing or fishing the pea paste or whatever. That's how I do it. I'm trying to just stay in touch, and that's kind of how I've gone about it. Anyway, so it was one of them days, the wind was hacking in my face, and with 2.5 hours to go, I felt like there was an opportunity to get on the margins a little bit earlier than normal. It was one of those situations where the wind was in my face, and that, for me, is the perfect scenario. It was overcast, and I felt like there was an opportunity to get in there earlier. So I actually, halfway through the match, potted some ground bait. Now, you've all seen me do this a million times, potted it right against the bank, but I intended to fish off the bank. This is a funny swim, this is. It's almost like a dinner table, in fact. There's a big, wide shelf where you can't actually get into any depth of water, but I didn't mind that so much. I just wanted to get away from the bank. They're very cautious. They've been caught a million times against the bank. They know you're fishing from up there at Shearsby. They know it. They just know, and I was like, I need to be fishing further away from the bank. So that's what I did. Made sure I was fishing away from the bank, and it worked a treat. All I was doing is, with this pot, half filling it with hemp, putting my big dollop of soft paste on the top, putting it in off the bank, and I was away. And all of a sudden, I turned around to Alex, I caught 2 That's all I caught, 2 on it, and I said to Alex, I'm going to win now. And that is how confident I am. Once that goes, once that they come in the edge, and if especially that early, even though I'm behind Sean and I think I'm behind Dave, and they're great anglers, don't get me wrong, I'm just so confident in what I'm doing that I just know that I can sort of power through, and it's not big-headed at all, it's just confidence. And I'm like, right, I just need to focus now, get my head down and make the most of these fish. Now what was nice is that the fish were a really good stamp. In fact, I caught 6 ghosties and 6 chucks for close to 50 pound, and that just showed you how big these fish were. They weren't all like that, but they were just little pods of fish coming through. They sort of average 4 or 5 pound in the edge there, but you do get them bigger ones mixed in, and I'm just clicking, I'm going through nets like, and all of a sudden I'm on my 4th net. It's a 65 pound net limit. I like to click to 55, gives me a bit of leeway. And all of a sudden I'm on my 4th net, and we've got like 45 minutes to go, and I'm thinking I need to put a 5th net in here. I've never caught a massive weight of Shearsby. I've caught 200 pound a few times, but I've never caught like a 300. And I thought I've got a great chance of catching 300 pound here. That's how fast I was catching. But then, just as I got to 40 pound, I think, on that 4th net, and I was just about to go and get the net, and the wind dropped. And I've had this so many times at this venue. Once that wind's not in your margin, they are absolute twats to catch. They are in your margin, but you can't catch them. And actually, they weren't even coming in. They'd gone from tailing up everywhere to not a sign of a fish. And it's amazing how it happens. Sean had the flat calm all afternoon, and his margin never really kicked on. And I think that is why, because the wind was blowing into our bank. So I knew I could get past Sean just because of the conditions. But all of a sudden, it happened to me. And I looked down, and there's 40 minutes left. I actually turned around to Alex and said, we might not catch another fish here. And he's like, shut up, it's ridiculous. I'm like, trust me, I know this venue inside out. When this happens, they bugger off. And that is exactly what happened. And I really struggled for the last 40 minutes. I tried every trick in the book. I went further off the bank. I tried new spots. I tried down my right-hand side, trying to start again. And I just couldn't catch them. And then in the last 20 minutes, a few rocked up, but again, missed bites, bow waving off the bait even. They were coming in and bow waving off, and it was just like they'd had enough. They shut shop. They were no longer confident, and I couldn't do anything about it. And I think I caught 2 more, which is unbelievable when you think I was filling a net in 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and then now I can't even get a bite. And it just shows you that sometimes conditions are everything. There wasn't a lot I could have done about it, but I felt good. I'd got to about 48, 49 pound on that last net, which meant that in my head I certainly had 200 pound, which is, yeah, brilliant. So anyway, I followed the scales round. Sean opposite me had 187 pound, which I felt like I got in front of Sean. I'd come from a long way behind him, and I'd got past him. That lack of wind in his swim totally killed him. So he was out of the running. I felt like I had 200 pound. Another lad down the bottom, James, who had I think 140, and then there was plenty of fish getting caught. And then I got to Dave Smith, who he was admitting to 200 pound. I thought, well, he's terrible on his nets, horrific on his nets. No offence meant, Dave, but you are terrible. And his first net over 65 pound, second net over 65 pound, third net over 65 pound. So I don't know what he was thinking, because I think one of them even went up to above 70 pounds, so he wasn't even close, and I think he's got a bit of form for that. And then I thought, well, if he has another net like that, then he's gonna have a big old weight. And I thought, I ain't catching that. I ain't beat that. If he's got 4 65s, I ain't beat that. And luckily for me anyway, his 4th net was a much smaller weight, I think 17, 18 pound, and I think he totaled 213 pound of a few knockbacks, which is still a fantastic weight. Just abysmal clicking though on Dave's part, because he missed out on weight in every single net, apart from obviously his 4th net. Anyway, it got to me, and on the flip side, for me anyway, my clicking was really good. And even the small fish net, where I'd caught all sorts, I think I had 64 pound in that one, I had 63 or 62. And then the last night I had a decent 50. I ended up with 230 pound, which was enough to win the match. Absolutely brilliant day. Biggest weight I've ever had on them lakes at Shearsby. So I was really chuffed for that. Dave, I don't know if he'd have beat, obviously we'll never know, because obviously errors when it goes over, but I suspect he'd have been mightily close without his keep net malfunctions. Maybe he'd have beat me, who knows. Obviously it's part of the game now, isn't it, the keep net rules, and I was lucky on this occasion to get the right side of that. Maybe Dave would have beat me, maybe he wouldn't. It was close anyway, because obviously you can normally tell. And if he'd have gone a few pound over on each net, he'd have been close. But if he'd have had a 75 thrown in there, he might have beat me. But we'll never know. Part of match fishing. Lucky enough to win. So that's 3 in a row on the channel. 3 matches that I've won in a row now. That's 4 out of my last 5 that I've won. Really pleased with that. Not doing tons of match fishing at the moment, but what we are doing at the minute, we're doing quite well and we've been quite effective at. So really enjoying it at the moment. Hope you're enjoying it too, and we'll see you again on the next video.